Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
All right, welcome in. Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are tuning in. We, from time to time, have some problems with Facebook, but it looks like today we have a big thumbs up and we're connected. Yesterday I had, if you missed it, I had Johnny Camus, who is one of the city councilmen for San Jose. He talked about COVID-19 and how San Jose was going to open up strategically. We also talked about small business, how it's affecting small business. And I got a bit of a laugh, Jack. I'm not sure, I have Jack Russo with me here. Most of you are familiar for now. He's the managing partner with the Computer Law Group. Welcome back, Jack.
Yeah, I got no tie and no jacket on because it's almost like a casual Friday. It's a casual Thursday. Of course, the office is closed and it's just me here, but I'm doing my work in the mailroom, dealing with notices from the courts that still come in paper form. It's so funny to see this and open the envelopes because I haven't done this for decades.
Well, business can't stop. So before we get started, we're going to, as most of you know, you've been following the show. This is the second year Jack and I are doing Growing Your Business, and we're doing subcategories of growing your business. And today we're going to be caught in the middle, so we're going to be talking a little bit about. Before we jump into that, Jack, I had the city councilman on yesterday. I was laughing a bit. I had to get I asked him, I said, what are the most complaints or issues? He said, Joe, you won't believe it, but the most emails, phone calls, texts I get, what do you guess, Jack, is the business that people most wish would reopen sooner than anything? What business do you think that is?
Well, my first reaction, but for the way you framed it, would be restaurants, but I think you framed it in a way that probably suggests it's hair salons.
Yeah, look at you. You're a smart guy. Yeah,
am I right?
Hair salon. Yeah, you are.
I'm telling you, people that have hair like you, I don't worry about it anymore because I just have my lovely wife takes a little, sort of buzzer to my head and I save myself $10. I go to this place that's run by some Korean woman. It's automated. They have a little teller ATM machine as you go in. You put your cash in, cash only, and you put your money in and they give you a ticket and then you wait. Now I guess they're going to have a line to wait. And basically you go in one at a time and, they do it with the buzzer. I think Lee does it just as well. She'll love hearing that because I do think that in 5 minutes, if you think about that 10 or 15 bucks, and multiply it times, potential for 10 people in an hour being shaved. It's actually $150 an hour if they really run that thing to full tilt, right?
So that was I got a kick out of that. He says the number one. So I countered and I said, I'm sure that people aren't going to like my response, but if they asked me, I said, the thing that I wish they would get back the soonest would the nonstop flights from San Jose to Maui. So that would be my request.
Oh, I thought those were still running.
I don't think they are.
They're not running?
Yeah, I don't think they are.
Because I saw the guy from Southwest come on saying we're running at about 15% occupancy of our seats. So if a typical Southwest 737 has 100 seats, I think it's more like 150.
Yeah.
That's like 20 people per flight. That's really, really small.
Yeah.
Really tiny.
Anyway, we're going to get started here. Thanks again for those that are tuning in, watching us on Facebook. We appreciate it. I love this technology, as most of you know, Jack knows. So I have this studio we created over the last several years. It's this great studio with the camera and backdrop and TV and all this. And now, because of COVID-19, it forced all of us to make adjustments and think on our feet. So here I am now in my office, navigating everything via the desktop. Look at that.
From your home.
No, I'm actually in the office.
You're in the office. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in
the
office.
So you've got a background that replaces your TV, and I've got a background that's real life flip chart in the conference room.
That's right.
And so, at some point we'll integrate this in some smart way. But the reason I thought it would be good to do this sort of caught in the middle, our previous 2 episodes dealt with too small to fail, which I think is true. The small is beautiful idea. Family companies, small companies that you really can control all of your costs,
Right.
particularly your labor costs, which are a big, big part of any business. And then too big to fail, like the airlines and these government subsidized military things, the airplane manufacturers, all those guys are too big to fail. And then what's in the middle, and I use as an example Uber and Lyft, and we've talked about this because they seem to be big, but I'm telling you, they're getting hit right in the middle. Right. With a view about, well, maybe there's a triple whammy here against them that may take them down, may take one of them down, could even take both of them down. It's hard to believe, but it is true that they could literally go under, and the idea will be a memory and will not be anything like a continuing business. I do think there's an existential threat to both of those very large, otherwise thought of as too big to fail companies. I don't think the government's going to bail them out. In fact, the triple whammy that I mentioned, and then we can go into this in greater detail, is number one, the Attorney General in the state of California filing a major suit against them saying you've misclassified all your workers. They're all employees. You're going to have to pay the state of California huge penalties and pay those workers for all of their back salary, overtime, penalties, medical benefits. We can go down the list. It's a shocking tab. The other side of it is the customers. A lot of the customers, even before the pandemic, were getting upset about a lot of the rogue contractors / employees, whatever they were, doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Causing accidents, causing, criminal acts, rapes, thefts. I can't tell you the stories that I've heard about this. And then on top of those two things, we have a pandemic. It's like a triple whammy. I say to people around my office, you know how it could get worse in California? We could have a major earthquake that knocks down all of our shelters. Where the hell are we going to shelter then?
Well, that's a good point. But it's interesting. I'll reflect back again. I talked to the council member yesterday. One of the things that came to me, and we're right in the middle of it, but still it's easy to get kind of clouded and fuzzy while this is going on. But along the same lines, the companies that seem to be, I wouldn't say unscathed, but that could be arguing that could come out of this thriving as many technology companies. It's interesting. We specifically talking about the Bay Area, of course, and again, not to kind of go sideways on this, but it is interesting that here it is that a lot of these technology companies, aren't struggling as much as your kind of traditional businesses, I'll say.
Well, the technology companies had 3 things going for them. Number one, they were technology savvy people. Right. Every one of those people had backup computers at home, printers at home.
Right.
The infrastructure was all there for them. Number 2, those people like to work at home. They work at night at home. They work in weekends. They're always working. They love their work. You could put them on a beach in Maui and they're going to work. You could put them on an airplane and they're going to work. You could put them with no Wi-Fi connection and they'll figure out a way to work. That's the second thing. And the third thing is they had systems in place.
Right.
That said, we will take the deliveries any which way you want to get them done.
Right.
We will get the deliveries into the queue of whatever agglomeration of technology is being created. So that infrastructure, that pipeline, that ability, it's so different than, say, Ford Motor or even Tesla, where you actually have to have a plant with a piece of metal running down the factory floor. Everything's in the cloud. Right. The cloud has saved this country trillions compared to where we would be if we didn't have the cloud. You could almost argue whoever originated the idea of let's move everything to the cloud, and it really originated many decades ago, that person should get the Nobel Prize, because latest statistics are we may be in for a 20 trillion with a T, 20 trillion of loss of GDP. It'd probably be 50 trillion if we didn't have the cloud.
Amazing.
I mean, Zoom alone may be saving the world from crazy making here. One technology.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a play on words. You remember when everybody would say, instead of making a copy, would everybody Xerox, right? Xerox
Right.
me a copy.
Right.
You could probably think of other businesses like this, but are you detecting, isn't it interesting that everybody, even though they're using different systems and technology and platforms, everybody says, let's set up a Zoom meeting?
Because people like the fact that they could see whether other people are paying attention.
Right.
When they're on the phone, they have no friggin' idea. Are you like off there playing some crossword puzzle or something?
That's
But
true.
when they can see people on a Zoom, they're like, I think I've got this guy's attention. And, if you do a Zoom meeting and you've got a flip chart, you actually can use a flip chart to demonstrate some points. And as you know, when we put stuff on the screen, you could go to a location and say, point out something on a slide.
Right.
Or on a document. We don't do that often, but we could, and maybe in the future we will, as we start to make points, because this whole idea of what's in the middle, it's actually a wide range of business. Small business these days, as defined by the SBA, the Small Business Association, is a company with 500 or less employees. 500 employees is a lot of employees. I mean, I don't know where you come from, but in my book, a 500 employee company, I think of as a big business, but the SBA treats it as a small business.
Mm-hmm.
A small business.
Right.
And Uber probably has more than 500 employees, not counting the contractors. If you count the contractors, all these people that are getting reclassified, at least according to the Attorney General, it's probably like 500,000 employees. I mean, think about that. How many businesses do you know with 500,000 employees and growing?
Right.
And growing, because the part-time teacher that drives an Uber is an employee.
Right.
The retired gentleman who was a postal worker getting a pension is driving an Uber part-time nights and weekends because he wants to make a few bucks, or she, and they want to talk to other people.
Yeah.
Some of them do it for the socialization.
So
all of that's going to change.
Yeah. So who's caught in the middle?
So I think there's a big chunk, a lot. I mean, I'd almost say if it's a bell curve, I mean, this is almost like a bell curve in a way.
Right.
Something else is illustrated here, but like a bell curve, I think the middle is about 70 to 80% of the businesses in America. Now, maybe it's smaller. Maybe the bigger chunk is the small companies. So let's say, it depends on whether you measure by volume of dollar revenue or you measure by number of people employed. But small businesses are a big part. These guys in the middle are a big part. Big businesses are actually a small sliver. They count for a lot in terms of revenue, but fundamentally, it's like the Fortune 500. It's 500 companies, right? It's not 5,000 companies. Right. You could argue it's 5,000 companies, but we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of companies. Right. The fact that there's 1,000 big companies, that's like a, footnote to the story. Those guys are going to stay in business because the government's going to bail them out. There are edge cases dealing with banks and the like that you probably are going to see some of them fall. But right in the middle are these companies that are otherwise pretty big. And the issue is, who is going to tide them through this depression-like period? If the customers aren't showing up to do it, if the government is not showing up to do it, and if the investors are not showing up to do it. Now remember, these are all companies that have huge valuations. Airbnb, they took a $17 billion write-down. Their valuation looks like it's going to go down by another $30 billion, 30, in the course of 1 or 2 months, because no one's renting Airbnbs. Why? No one's traveling. Why? No one's getting on a plane. Why? Well, the risk, the perception that if I get on the plane, it's going to be the equivalent of a death sentence.
Right.
Or an illness, or a risk of giving it to my kids. I mean, there are some people, I have to say, there's some salespeople they're like, hey, man, I'll come and visit you and try to sell you whatever. And you look at them, why don't you sell me on the phone? They're like, nah, I got to see you. I'll just stay at the other end of the conference room and talk to you. And, these are people you cannot stop, man. They're going to make their quota and then some, because their attitude is, if no one else is traveling, I got a competitive advantage. I'm going to get in my car and drive 14 hours to see you, and I'm going to make a goddamn impression on you and close that deal. And you look at the guy like, are you freaking crazy? And he's like, no, this is in my DNA. This is what I do. And I think there are people that are still getting on Southwest Airlines and making sales calls.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And those companies are lucky to have people like them, because they will outperform and they will try to keep those companies alive. And that's the real nature of when you have an employee who really is kicking to keep the company alive. But focusing again on these companies in the middle, why are they in such desperate straits? Part of the reason, beyond that they can't get the financial support, they can't rescale that easily. If you're at Uber, if you start rescaling and cutting, guess what? If someone turns on the app and they can't get a car for 15 minutes, they're probably going to call a cab.
Yeah.
Or they're probably going to get on their bicycle. Do you know how many people I know that used to take Ubers that are now biking? like I'm talking 10, 15 miles of biking.
It's a good.
I'm talking an hour plus of biking, Joe.
It's a good result.
No, and they're saying to themselves, I need the exercise. I can't really trust the Uber car is going to be clean. I have a bike. I got out of storage. There's no one on the street. I feel safe riding the bike. And I'm going to get there, and I'm going to lock the bike. Maybe it won't be stolen.
Yeah.
The criminals are all sheltering in place.
I'd like to spend a couple of minutes in the middle here with this caught in the middle, Jack. Obviously, with your expertise and background in the law, we've talked about this before. This COVID-19 is going to spur all kinds of lawsuits. Till we don't even know. We don't even know yet. I'm sure there's going to be millions and millions from a perspective. And this goes out to, this is partly for these small business owners or people that own businesses that are watching this podcast, or later on listening to it, I should say, that may need some legal guidance or support or counsel. I know it's an extreme, but you take the gal in, I think it was Texas, the hairdresser, that said, I got to feed my kids. I'm going to go bankrupt. I got to open up no matter what. And they threw her in jail. I think they let her out today. In general, do a lot of these laws supersede no matter what other counties or jurisdictions? I mean, how does that work? It's probably a broad question, but.
No, I think it's an okay question. I think what you're getting to is regulations get passed in all sorts of quirky ways. Sometimes it's a city regulation. Sometimes it's a county regulation. Sometimes it's a state regulation. Occasionally, or more and more these days, a federal, national regulation. And then there's a police power to enforce the regulation. So I'll give you a story that's associated with this.
Okay.
Stinson Beach, a great place. It should be one of the 7 wonders of the world, in my opinion, but people think there are other greater beaches, not for my money, and certainly not in Northern California. They were getting a lot of people driving up to Stinson Beach and crowding out the roads to such a degree that the fire trucks couldn't get through the local streets. So guess what they did? They said to all the sheriffs, come out here and just start ticketing these cars. So they were ticketing cars for, like, you don't have your front license plate. You don't have, your wheels are not turned in on a hill. Your tire is slightly flat. I mean, I've never heard about getting a ticket for a tire being flat, but it's like considered your car is not mobile and it's in the way. And all of these people who came in from, other places, they're not Stinson residents, they're like pulling their hair out. This place is repressive. The cops are all over us. And the cops are just doing what might be called the police function on all these regulations that are in the books.
Yeah.
But no one really ever pays attention to them because the cops are too busy dealing with rapes and crimes and armed robbery and all sorts of other nasty stuff.
Right.
But now, because the local community is in an uproar that, hey, this is our home. What are you doing coming here? Get out of here. You don't belong here. the parking lots are all closed because they don't want people going to the beach. So the county park and there's actually a federal park. All of those parking lots are closed. Those parking lots hold like 400 cars. Where the heck are those 400 cars going to go once you've made it down Route 1 to Stinson Beach? Well, they go into all the side streets. So, of course, people were like pulling their hair out. They couldn't find a place to park on their own. So those regulations, in whatever form they exist, the police have the power to write them up. And in some cases, I think there have been stops where you're supposed to have some sort of mask on.
So what
and
if,
you have a mask on, they could stop and cite you. I guess theoretically they could even maybe do more than a detention.
So
seems like a pretty extreme thing, right?
So whether it's a restaurant owner, a beauty shop, or a real estate agent, or whatever, anybody that's self-employed, do they have any grounds to say, wait a minute, I'm losing my livelihood. I got to go back to work, and you guys caused me to go bankrupt, and my wife left me, and I mean, I could go on and on and on. Do they have any basis for that, or
well,
not?
Usually it goes, my wife left me, my dog died, and my banjo broke. You know, it's like a country and western kind of song. But the short answer is the state has huge regulatory power over health.
Okay.
If there is a health risk,
okay,
like if there is a genuine health risk, it can't be made up, it can't be pretextual. They can literally lock you in your house. Like literally, they could have martial law.
Wow.
With gunmen on the street saying you are not leaving your home. And you could say, I'm starving, I've got no food. And they'll be like, we'll get you some food. You're staying in your house. And you'd be like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And they're like, there is an outbreak here and you cannot multiply the risk for the rest of us.
Okay.
We are not going to let that happen. So that's an extreme example. I mean, we've actually had it pretty easy. Okay. When you talk to people, and there are still a few alive that went through the 1918 pandemic, there are a few over 100 years old that talk about how the police were literally forcing quarantines because they saw the risk as very high. I mean, can you imagine being at home with no internet, no radio? Maybe radio had just started back then. No TV.
It would probably do us all good.
I mean, think about it. It's pretty amazing. But these companies, get back, these companies stuck in the middle, they're caught between two whipsaws. Whipsaw number one is the people can say, man, I got to get paid. You can't do this to me. I've got seniority here, da-da-da-da-da-da. And the customer saying, I'm not paying. You're crazy. You may have me on a subscription plan and think that I'm going to prepay for all these Uber rides. I'm going to cancel that and ask American Express or Visa or MasterCard to reverse the charges. You're not giving me any service. There are people that pre-bought some of these Uber rides. I think they got to make good on that. I don't think they could say, sorry, lose it or use it or lose it. So the revenue's stopping, but the expenses are continuing. That's a death spiral. Okay. That's a death spiral. That's like Southwest Airlines last night. The CEO was on TV saying, we're burning cash and we don't know what to do because we've got a strong position. We got $15 billion with a B in the bank, but guess how long that lets them last? That may not let them last long enough.
No.
And then the question is, who comes in when you've got someone like, the Oracle of Nebraska, Warren Buffett, I'm getting out of the airlines. What a signal. I don't trust the airlines anymore. He was not exactly going to stay in. He wasn't saying I'm buying, the blood is on the street. He was like, I'm out of here. Right. We took our profit, we got out.
Yep.
And he was a long time bullish person about the airline business. And he got out, which is a real statement of, hey man, I think we're not going to see a recovery for years, as in plural. Not months and certainly not weeks. So if you're someone like the President of the United States and, he's got a lot of problems on his shoulders, and I don't imagine anyone would want to be in his shoes. I don't even know why Joe Biden wants to run. He doesn't seem to be able to put a sentence together. I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not pro-Biden. I'm sort of looking for somebody to show up that really is a leader. I just don't see either of them as being that. But you've got a ginormous problem. It's bigger than the 2008 problem by like tenfold. The 2008 problem was a relatively small pimple compared to the cancer that you have here.
So
You're faced with that as a leader.
Yeah.
What do you do? Because you could see Trump is going nuts that I can't get these governors to agree to reopen their states. And it is a governor's decision what to do at the state level.
So you're saying, yeah, it's so tough and challenging that you can't even get the president of the United States to get his wishes granted, right?
I think he's constrained by so many limits on his authority and so many regulatory hoops to jump through. And he clearly wants people to go back to work, but then he vacillates about it. He tried to end that task force, but then he said people were getting all upset, so I guess we'll continue it. I mean, you could see he's flip-flopping all over the place. Right. Part of the reason is there's no obvious answer to this. It's not like you could say, well, we went through this in 1918. Who could remember? 1918. We went through this in 1918. I guess Joe Biden mistakenly referenced 1918 when he meant 2018 in his latest speech, and people were all over him saying, are you losing it upstairs? That's 100 years ago. But people went through this, and it wasn't like there was a bright light test that said, now all is well, right? So you've got the storyline here of there's no ninth inning is coming. We're in the seventh inning, the ninth inning. The game is 9 innings. The game will be over. There were 3 outs to an inning. There's 3 strikes to an out. There's 4 balls to a walk. You get the
look at you. You know your baseball pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there's rules. There's rules about this stuff.
That's right.
Even the longest games don't run 20 hours. And you may correct me and say, well, there was one that was like 19 hours and 12 minutes. But I think the longest game that ever ran was something like 12 or 14 hours. And, probably half the stadium left by, the 3rd hour or the 4th hour, because at some point it just gets to be too much. And I think it was like 26 innings or something like that. We'll get the actual data, maybe put it in the episode notes. We don't have that here. We don't have rules of the game that say this thing will last exactly 3 months. Everything's fine. Let's all go back to work. If anything, my fear is that this thing is morphing rapidly, and we are going to face a series of new cases where people are just going to say, this thing is out of control, and if we do anything that involves anyone that has any infection, there's a multiplicative effect, and all we can do is really even what I would call super shelter in place.
Wow.
Which means if that's the story, all those businesses in the middle will either become small businesses or they'll get absorbed by really big businesses. There's no other outcome, or they'll go out of business. But typically, before they go out of business, they get a lifeline from a bigger business. So in theory, Lyft could be acquired by Uber. Uber could be acquired by Apple. I mean, it sounds crazy, but imagine if you buy an iPhone, you get 50 rides baked into the iPhone. Let me tell you something, that'll sell a lot of iPhones. So long as Apple says, when you go into the car, you're going to put on one of our new Apple Watches, which is going to tell whether or not you have a temperature. And if you do, you don't get to go in the car.
And it's going to tell you if you're near someone that has a temperature, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then Apple is doing stuff that really is creative and really is helping the process. But, they're so relatively slow compared to the way they were decades ago. I hate to be critical of them, but, they don't do that kind of moonshot innovation. So maybe Google will do it. Maybe even Amazon will do it. Maybe Tesla. Some other company will do it.
Elon Musk.
Well, it's a statement because imagine in theory, the self-driving version of let's call it the Model 4, because it's not out yet, that Tesla comes out with. Let's imagine that Model 4 or 5 or whatever the magic number is that he picks actually is self-driving, actually does allow you to get into a living room, actually does have a heat sensor for each person that's going through the door, actually does say, look, you can't come in the car, you've got a temperature, or does something else. he will have saved Uber if Uber says we're going to basically run a fleet of Teslas and we're going to do mostly self-driving. I mean, look, Uber does not have a self-driving car yet. The closest they have was more or less litigated out of existence by Waymo, and they're probably pretty far behind. So they probably have to rely on a Tesla or someone else to come out with that self-driving car. Now, even Tesla's at risk. They're in the middle. They're not too big to fail yet. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe Elon, call if you have some views on this, because I have to tell you, you sending a signal that you're selling everything is not the right signal to send. No. You should be saying, I'm here, I'm moving to Silicon Valley from Los Angeles. I'm here, I'm going to save the world with the rest of the Silicon Valley leaders. We're going to figure out a way to get the world to get into the 21st century, both feet forward. He made some wacky announcement. Excuse me, Elon, I'm a big supporter, but the wacky announcement, I'm selling everything like I'm on the way to Mars, man.
No, he said he made some ridiculous statement. He goes, the stock's too high.
And then the stock went higher. The stock went down by 10%, then it went up by another 20. I mean, it was like two steps sideways, one step back, and two steps forward.
Reverse psychology. Well,
I mean, it was great. It was a crazy outcome, because he also said, I'm selling everything. And that's not a great signal about how you feel about the material world. But secondly, the other piece of news that I think has been hidden up to now, but someone told me this is true. I hope this is right. I'm not trying to slander him, but someone said, oh, yeah, his newest girlfriend just gave birth to a new baby.
That's true.
I'm like, what? I thought he was married with like 5 or 6 kids. What the hell is going on here? And I'm a big Tesla booster. In fact, I'll tell one story here just to show what booster I am. I've had a Tesla for a long time. And now, of course, it's getting older. All these lights are coming on. Like, who would ever know this? On top of all the batteries in a Tesla, there's a 12-volt battery that operates to make sure the electronics work when you're parked.
Okay.
It doesn't draw off the main batteries that run the motors, right? I get a light that comes on that says 12-volt battery needs repair. This was about a month ago. With the app, no phone call, just the app, say, hey, 12-volt battery, they have the data, I'm ready for a service call. They come to the car. You don't even bring it to the shop. They come to the car. The guy comes in. The guy says, okay, your car is 5 years old, 4 years old, whatever it is. He said, man, that battery lasts a long time. They usually only last 3 years. He said, I replaced the battery, puts a new battery in. Car runs fine. The light comes on this morning, same light. So I wrote them a nasty note saying, same friggin' light. I just finished paying for the replacement battery. They were like, we're sending a guy out right now. This shouldn't be happening. The guy shows up like within an hour.
Oh.
Unfriggin' believable. The guy shows up. He's like, you know what? There's some loose wires, but I'm going to give you a new battery. I'm going to give you a brand spanking new battery. I replaced all the rest. The guy was working on the car for 2 hours. I'm saying, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to give you a whole new wiring harness. He's like, I don't know what happened to your car. I don't know if some water got in someplace, but he said, I'm giving you full service, full warranty, new battery. And I thought, man, that is a way to really extend goodwill to your customer.
You can't argue with that. We got just a couple minutes. Let's wrap this up on somewhere in the middle, and then remind all the listeners and viewers where they could reach out to you with all these people that are going to need legal advice.
Right. So in general, I would say the companies in the middle have the most to worry about, and a lot of them are genuinely worried. Some of them are not. Mm-hmm. I would say regardless of Tesla getting to be bigger than Ford and GM combined, I would argue Tesla is in the middle. Tesla may not be treated the same as Ford and GM because they have far fewer employees.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Think about it. They've got a lot of automation, so the government may not bail them out. Now,
interesting.
There are some issues about climate and the rest that may justify a bailout even for them. But the fact that that stock keeps running higher does not mean that that company is not in the middle. Seeking to either be very big, a lot bigger, because they don't produce that many cars. I think they produce a fraction of the cars, and they're not even really profitable yet, although they're trying to get break even. They're trying to get to break even. So these companies in the middle, and we often serve them in lots of ways, they need to really have a plan B and a plan C. And either plan B is you merge in with the bigger folks and you become too big to fail, or you start figuring out maybe we're actually 3 or 4 businesses. So for my money, my bet would be if Tesla starts to see what I would call the triple whammy effect of what's going on, Tesla will have to spin off the solar panel division to some other bigger company. They'll have to spin off the building products division. They'll have to spin off the battery division. They'll have to do a bunch of machinations that say, we're trying to do the best we can to focus on our core competency. And that's what may happen with Uber. That's what may happen to Lyft. That's may happen to a whole host of companies. We are in the vortex of a transition state change. And with that change will either come good creative destruction where better businesses come into the picture, or we'll see a lot of pain and a lot of loss and a lot of people saying, wow, this was worse than 1929, which is hard to imagine. But we might be there even before the 100th year anniversary of 1929.
All right. Let us know, let those know how they could reach you if they need some help or get an idea where they want to reach out to you or your office. How would they?
Sure, Joe. So I'm Jack Russo, managing partner of Computer Law Group. We have offices in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, downtown Palo Alto, a block from the Apple store that's still closed here, right near the Stanford campus, as well as in San Francisco. We still answer the phone. We still have people at 650-327-9800. We actually are very responsive. And of course, the email is jrusso, JRUSSO, @computerlaw. That's all one word, computerlaw.com. That's where the website is. There's actually a whole series of podcasts that you've helped motivate me to do. We did a couple with Dr. Joel Furman.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good.
Amazing. I mean, Joel was totally on. And I mean, Joel was Joe. I've known Joel now for a couple of decades. He's an amazing individual medical doctor. He's moved from New Jersey to California, so he's proud. He said the taxes are lower in California than Jersey. I was like, man, you're one of the few people that have ever said that.
That's only one other, you can only say that one other place, right? New York's got to be the place.
Exactly. He's like, no, I'm happy to be here. I pay less taxes here. And plus he said it's sunny. I don't have all those heating oil and gas bills.
That's right. All right, Jack, good to see you. We'll check in next week and do another show. Until then, take care of yourself.
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks for setting this up. It looks like you've got the whole rig working and working well.
Yeah, it's coming together well. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you again for those that are tuning in on Facebook. For more information, you can always go to RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Thanks again. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.